Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast for men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast.
Well, hello, Deborah Johnson here today with a really interesting subject, the nightmare of being unprepared. And how do you prepare? I'm sure we've all gone through times where we've had that nightmare. And I'm going to approach that subject today. And how do you prepare? Because I'm going to give you some clues, hopefully, that will help you in your process. And it's a really good one for me. It's one that I have had to approach many times in my life as an entertainer, as well as a speaker. So how do you prepare? Oh, how do you prepare for those times that you wake up with a start and you feel totally unprepared, trying to remember where you were and why you were feeling that way? You've been there, right? You have this horrible pit in your stomach and you feel lightheaded. And you do remember grasping for your notes, trying to find something that will help you navigate that horrible feeling that you can't find your place to fulfill your responsibilities. Horrible feeling. And that feeling gets worse and worse, like you can't get away from the situation fast enough. That's when you realize it was a nightmare. And it's a nightmare many of us have experienced. And it doesn't always happen at night and in a bad dream, does it? It can happen before you walk on a stage for a speech or a performance. It can happen before a meeting or even before what could be a difficult conversation. And that feeling of being unprepared, it's real and it's not comfortable at all. And it opens that gate for anxiety and fear. So how do you combat this feeling, especially if you're not prone to being neurotic or obsessive compulsive, repeating every action over and over and over and over? How do you prepare? Well, we'll cover 3 principles here to help answer that question, including planning ahead, establishing a routine, and reviewing and practicing. And these are things I implement in my own personal life. So first, plan ahead for the unknown. A nightmare that finds you standing on a stage, speechless and grasping for words to say, it might not be a scenario that will ever happen to you. You might be one who just sits behind a desk or a computer and you're never even called upon to stand and speak or even interact with clients or potential contacts. But you can probably remember times that you were, even in school. But at this point, fearing what will probably not take place, it might seem absurd, but apparently feeling that panic does happen for many people. Our human brain, it acts like an encryption device, deciphering sounds, smells, and visual images. It hinders as well as it translates thousands of different types of code a day. It's hard to imagine a more powerful encryption device than the human brain, which constantly converts information into a type of code which drives thousands of thoughts per day. And I write about this in chapter 9 in the book, Bad Code. And I wrote this particular book because my large music website, it was hacked. And I realized that our minds can be hacked just as easily as a website. Very scary, but very enlightening as well. Now, that fear of speaking, it does propel many to join organizations similar to Toastmasters and Dale Carnegie to overcome that fear and to build their confidence. And they've created an easy ramp into taking those small steps of verbalizing short and small presentations in comfortable and very safe settings. Now, joining an organization like this may not appeal to you, but the principle of planning ahead and preparing for the probable is a very valuable one that should be heeded. In my recent interview with Mike Morrell, former California state senator, and I'll put the links in the article that comes with this, and you can read that article or you can listen. He prepared for his campaign for 5 years while still running 3 successful businesses. And part of his process was joining Toastmasters to work on his speaking. And it was a skill that did not come naturally to him, but it helped him improve tremendously. He planned ahead. Experiencing a nightmare, it could be a healthy wake-up call, propelling you to move forward toward the unexpected. And there's nothing wrong with bettering yourself at areas that stretch and that challenge you. And what holds many back is that fear or lack of action. And I talk about this in the episode and in the podcast, the rabbit hole of distraction. And if you're honest with a worst case scenario, you can at least think through action items to better prepare for the unexpected. If you put off the future, if you keep putting it off to endless tomorrows, it does no good to move forward any time or anywhere. Nobody can in their businesses or their life. Procrastination or postponing and delaying the inevitable, it's easily multiplied without a plan for follow through on those tasks. And a simple plan, it could be easy as creating an action list with items to just check off. I like to do this the night before usually. It helps me start my day. And establishing solid routines can help calm nerves to quell that anxiety. So that is such a great principle here of just creating a plan. Not being afraid to have that plan put into something in place and taking action on that. That's really, really important. And I'm going to talk now about some routines and how important that is, because that is another part of this whole plan is establishing that routine. And a routine can be very, very small. So establishing a routine, at the thought of a routine, it might feel unnatural or rigid. It might feel boring in many ways, but it's freeing, especially if the routine includes these little rote tasks that can free up your mind and your thoughts for other areas. And a really good book to read for establishing very small routine tasks that can change your life is that book, Tiny Habits. And in this book, the premise is to connect one very small action to a task that you're already performing. And it works very well for activities you like to add to your schedule, like taking regular walks, cleaning your office. This is a good one for me, cleaning your office at the end of the day, and even adding healthy choices to your diet. So how can routine help you in quelling the nightmare of unpreparedness? Well, first, evaluate your fear and what that fear is and its probable origins. Are you standing on that bare stage, stumbling for words because you've recently been called upon to give a report to your colleagues? Well, that scenario can scare people who would rather stay in the background. But establishing a routine of mental preparedness, imagining yourself in that situation, that will help you overcome some of that fear. And I'd like to divert just a little bit from this with an illustration of what your mind can do. I had a college instructor and I was in my second 2 years of college, so it was the third and fourth year of my undergraduate work. And my instructor had to work on the railroads, and he told me that he would memorize some of his music that he had to have done. He would just memorize them mentally, and then he would be able to practice them and perform them, because he didn't have the actual time to just sit at that piano and go over and over and over. He needed to work it into his mental muscle memory first. And this is one of the ways that I even have worked on a show, is I imagine myself of playing the music, of singing the music, of walking on that stage. And it helps me prepare for actually doing it. I don't have to physically do it every single time, but I can imagine that scene. And I remember when I was first memorizing Rhapsody in Blue, that I did a 6-minute section of Rhapsody in Blue in my show. And it almost ended up being like a nightmare, because I would go over and over and over the music, but I could imagine myself playing it. So it helped me out in the actual memorization, because I put myself into that situation, in that scene, so I could imagine myself playing the piece. And I got beyond some of the fear of forgetting it. So putting together a routine of taking those small steps, first imagining yourself walking into a room if you're going to give a speech, and then creating the scene to actually walk in the room physically, that creates a good start. And you can then place yourself in the position where you will most likely be speaking, little tiny steps at a time, so you can get the idea. And you'll really want to read the article in the interview that I had with Linda Fogg Phillips on tiny habits. This was one of our, I think I started this year actually with that show, with that episode. So make sure it is a great interview. So now let's get to our third point. Consistently review and practice. Very important. Success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. And that quote is often attributed to the author and the speaker, Zig Ziglar, 1926 to 2012. But the origins, they go back even further. The Roman philosopher Lucius Annaeus Seneca, he was in, 4 BC to 65 AD, way back. He said, luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Great quote. So when recently presenting a live stream presentation of newly released sheet music and MP3 downloads, I spent time in practice, even recording myself multiple times before pressing the live stream record button. Now understand, this was original music. I wrote it, and I could have easily just played the pieces almost spontaneously, but I wanted to be better than that, using additional technical tools, which took concentration. So the day before presenting, I spent time to completely set up with extra lights, the camera I'd be using, the laptop, and the speaker system for playing a soundtrack. I would be recording at my acoustic grand piano, my Blüthner, playing and singing at the same time. Now, the tricky part was to make sure that you could hear all the parts clearly on a live stream, which is nowhere near the sound quality of a recording studio. So after setting up, I rehearsed 4 times, get it, 4 times, recording every single time on Zoom so I could evaluate the sound, the lighting, and performance. This was not a paid performance. It took extra time and effort, but it was time I was willing to spend for the actual performance to be as good as possible with my current setup and with my current know-how. There were still some little glitches, but those didn't hinder people, thousands of people, from liking the performance and previewing the music, which was the goal. But it was very important for me to spend that time and effort. I apply this type of preparation with other areas as well, such as speeches. People think, oh, you're just good technically. Well, I practice my technical aspects. Now, my keynote speech is ready to present in many ways. I have a fairly new one, both live and virtually, but it can always get better. You see, a speech is seasoned with live performance and opportunity. It's very similar to presenting headline music concerts, which I've also done many times through the years. Consistent rehearsal, evaluation, and then the courage to step out on a stage to present it is what it takes for any presentation to be as good as it gets, because again, that live performance will season it. So what happens when you have a nightmare? Well, when a nightmare of unpreparedness does occur, it could be a wake-up call for a future occurrence. So do you need to create a plan, establish a routine, or systematically review and practice? Those principles can be applied to many areas of both life and business. Minimize the nightmares, but use those times to propel you forward with preparedness. And don't be afraid to spend that time. And I told you that illustration of recording even my live stream 4 times, it was not a paid speech. It was not a paid performance. I was doing this to help advertise and to be able to help demonstrate some of my music, which is very important. People love to see the live demonstrations. I mean, how much do you eat when you go to a store like Costco or Sam's Club or any of those that have the samples? We all want to sample it. We all want to see it. So it was important for me to give a little sample to show as much as I could for some of the music that was not new to me. I'd written it some years ago, but I'm just putting out the music. So it was very, very important. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And if you've had a nightmare recently, that you can apply some of these principles. Don't be afraid of them. Use them to prepare you and propel you forward. And again, I mentioned a couple things today with books. I've written, of course, 5 of them that I promote. This one, Bad Code, it's a great book, by the way. And it's available in most versions, like an ebook and paperback hardbound. I've not done the audiobook for it. I will at some point. And of course, The Summit, which is my most recent. Love this book. Also, you can get the audiobook for it. It's a great book. That's an allegory, which is a little bit different than anything else. And all of my books my other books, they give you application and questions that you can go through as well. Very interesting. And in Bad Code, we go through the decades of code, decades of your life, and some of the things that you will encounter. I do some interviews there, very interesting interviews. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you connect with me on, you get onto my newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter, to get on the weekly articles that you will get with every single episode, every single show. And I put out, of course, the podcast, womenathalftime.com. And I'd love to be able to continually keep in touch and connect with you. If you listen, please share, even write a review. Would love that as well. Every single one of those really does help. And it helps others to see what you are seeing as well. So thanks again for joining me, and I will look forward to being with you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenathalftime.com.